What's up, everybody? NWO. How's it going? Jimmy Faluca reporting with my guest, Mr. Frank. How are you this evening, sir?
What's going on?
Well, we've got a lot to cover in one night, Frank. You think we can handle it?
I think we can handle it.
All right. We have been on a very interesting road these past few months in the world of professional wrestling, and specifically the WWE, and this all really came to a head at the Royal Rumble, and I have to say, very interesting. Some would say disappointing, but interesting nevertheless. Um, the first thing I have on my list for the Royal Rumble is that the crowd basically took over. They took over the John Cena match with Randy Orton. They took over the Rumble match itself, but we will get in depth on the Royal Rumble later on. But what do you have to say about the crowds basically taking control of the product for that evening?
Well, I don't think they've taken control of the product. I think right now all this quote unquote hijacking stuff it's becoming a trend, you know. And if I know wrestling fans, it's just gonna be a trend where they start hijacking and protesting everything. And that's why I always keep saying that, we can't trust the fans' opinion. You have to trust the people running behind the scenes.
But what do you have to say about the crowd basically booing the Randy Orton John Cena title match? Do you think that it was just a cool thing to do, or do you think the fans are genuinely tired of the feud?
Yeah, well, because of that, I think in that moment, I think it was just. I think that when we look back on it in a year or so, we're going to look at that Royal Rumble as the line between the old and the new. That's why, if you remember, John Cena the night after on Raw said, or a few weeks after, he said, "This is the end of the feud." And he's made mention on TV about the new generation coming in. Because everybody, it's apparent to everybody that if WWE must go into a new direction. The future is here.
That goes without saying. Then the next thing I have on the list for the Royal Rumble is Batista's return basically is a flop. I think the WWE's original plan was for Batista to go through the entire run to WrestleMania as a babyface and win the title. However, I feel personally that the crowd, the way they reacted to him, changed the course of history. I don't think they brought Dave Batista back to be a villain. That's just me. I felt they brought him back to win the title, but the fans weren't accepting it. And everyone's got a different opinion as to why that's so. And I'm going to be very honest, I feel that the reason that the fans turned on Batista so much was because they felt that he was in Daniel Bryan's spot.
Oh, that's without question. But I don't know why they wanted to bring Batista back as a face. If you remember, the last time they left, he was like one of the most hated guys.
And I'll tell you something, I enjoyed his work more as a heel, with the spotlight on me, the way he was with John Cena. I enjoyed that version of Batista.
I think he's one of those guys. He's better off as a heel. But they were trying to cash in and get that instant pop. When he came back, he's a quote unquote legend. Returning with a limited contract, and they were trying to cash in,
and it didn't work.
I think it was just bad booking. Right now, Daniel Bryan is the number one face of the company, baby face.
Well, we will get into Daniel Bryan later on, but now let's get into the Royal Rumble match. There were a few things that went on. Kofi Kingston had his yearly, close call. My favorite podcast, The Solid Monster, compares him to Sonic the Hedgehog, constantly trying to stay out of lava, which I found as a pretty funny description as a video game guy myself. Roman Reigns broke Kane's record for most eliminations. I consider that to be a great thing. I don't think it hurts Kane at all. Kane's a legend. He's going to go in the Hall of Fame someday, regardless of who broke his record. But I think it was a good showing for Roman Reigns. I felt that Dean Ambrose trying to eliminate Reigns, along with the struggle with Seth Rollins, plus the Shield being eliminated by Roman Reigns, was a good way to segue into their feud even more, because here and there you saw Roman Reigns kind of throw, that look like he's finally getting sick of Dean Ambrose. But to me, the Royal Rumble elimination of the two members of the Shield by Roman Reigns solidified to me that the Shield will implode at WrestleMania in a triple threat match. That's where I stand on them.
Well, I've called that. I've been called that for a while, but yeah, they've been building it up for a long time. I like that some of the angles they're doing, they're taking their time building up. even though TNA tries to do the same thing, but they don't progress. Where WWE progresses with their angles, that's what TNA has to learn to do.
Yeah, well, we could do a whole show on the mistakes TNA's made in the last 5 years, but then we'd be here till next Christmas.
Yeah, that was definitely they used that Royal Rumble match as a way to put over Roman Reigns. Definitely,
Absolutely, and I'll tell you something. It felt good to see Roman Reigns get a little bit of love at the end of the Royal Rumble, and I think that, not that I don't think that he wasn't over, but I just felt that when it came down to him and Batista, the fans were just wanting someone other than Batista to win because they understood that Batista's going to be in Daniel Bryan's spot, and the fans didn't want him there. I still say...
Like I said earlier, I think when we look back from a year from now...
It'll be the changing of the gods.
That night of the Royal Rumble 2014 as the night the one generation ended and another one began. That was just... people were just really... It's not so much Daniel Bryan. Daniel Bryan is the poster child of the new generation, and that's what it is. The people finally want to see those new faces, and people.
That's what I was saying earlier on the page several times. I say that it's not just Daniel Bryan's popularity. It does play a big part because the guy is so over. But there is another factor in there for the fans. I think the fans basically, and I don't know if I'm speaking into the camera, I don't know if the guys agree. Some of them don't. Some of them are happy with the same old faces, and that's fine. That's their opinion. They're allowed to enjoy the show for whatever it is that entertains them. But I feel that the majority of the fans are just tired of the same old faces.
Well, you can always want new faces, but you can't push the new faces, and the new faces can't take the ball unless they are ready to run the ball. I mean, that's why you saw a couple years ago when you had John Cena versus The Miz, John Cena versus R-Truth, main event pay-per-views. They tried to put these new faces in, but I don't want to say it. They're good characters, but they're just maybe they weren't built up as much as these guys are getting built up. But
it's all in the booking, Frank. I think we could agree on that.
Whereas as these guys, you could see these guys they have that, as you call it.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the few times that we've seen, just as an example, the few times that I've seen the Wyatts and the Shield interact, the crowd ate it up.
I mean, I don't know. Nobody knows what the it factor is, but, I mean, we've seen since the Shield debuted.
Oh, absolutely. They have it.
That great six-man tag. What was that?
The first six-man tag they ever had was at TLC 2012, and that was a mind blower.
Yeah, they stole the show, and you could tell right there and then that 3 stars were born
on that night. Absolutely, without question. That was the only reason I bought the DVD to begin with. I only bought the 2012 TLC DVD for that match, and
the fact that we talk about it, that's normal. In today's day and age, where you have pretty much 6 hours of programming and pay-per-view every month, it's so hard to forget everything, and you basically only remember the bad things and the good things. So
I know what you're saying, but finishing off the Royal Rumble subject, let's be honest. Batista did not get the reception that the WWE expected him to get. I mean, the last time the guy got cheered was the night he returned, and then after that it was downhill from there. And I feel bad for Dave, because listen, I have no problem with Dave Batista. I like Dave. I thought that a couple of the feuds he had were pretty damn good, and I thought he was a halfway decent wrestler. But the problem is, he is in a spot that he did not belong in. And I think that that's very apparent right now. I could get into how many different ways I would have booked Batista, so that way he wouldn't have been in that position, because I think that this hurt him to a degree, because there was a time where Dave was pretty over with the audience, where he was the number 1 or at least the 1B babyface in the company, and I feel bad for him because I believe he genuinely loves the business. However, I feel that Batista knew he was coming back. He should have educated himself to know what he was coming back to, and not just accept, okay, I'm going to win the Royal Rumble, and then I'm going to win the title. You got to go with how the fans are reacting, and right now it's looking like it's going to be Randy Orton versus Batista in the main event, and I think that main event will be just as bad as The Miz versus John Cena was, because that was horrible. And at WrestleMania 30, do you really want your last match to be that? Is
It's
my
not going to be that, and I think we might even get the first ever WWE title match, maybe second on the show. How about that? They might put that match second on the show.
No, we'll see what happens with that. But now we're going to get into the Elimination Chamber. The Elimination Chamber pay-per-view. This was a night where the WWE crowd really got a taste of the next generation that you were talking about. Not just with the Shield versus the Wyatts, which we're going to get into right now, but the performance later on in the evening. We'll just get into the Elimination Chamber match itself. Antonio Cesaro, I mean, I knew he was talented before, but the guy just, he shined in that Elimination Chamber match.
Yeah, well, now you see, this pay-per-view was the entire Cesaro's breakout moment, and he has what it takes.
Oh, absolutely.
It's just a matter of them booking him into that spot. I mean, I've seen a few NXT matches of him versus Sami Zayn, and
yeah, that pay-per-view was incredible.
And,
the three matches.
He's always had good matches, and ever since he's another guy. When he first stepped on the scene, he had that gimmick with the languages, and he could speak 5 languages, and you could tell he was a heel. And he's another guy. He has that it factor. And then when you see him do the neutralizer on the Great Khali, you're like, wow.
I remember watching that live. And when he does the big swing on these guys that are humongous, I mean, he's got the look.
What is it? That's his finishing move, the neutralizer on Khali. He picked him up.
I saw that. That was incredible.
That showed you how strong he was, and that's really stuck with people. And
he's been over for a while, and I think that the fans are ready to cheer for this guy. I think that'll happen soon, but we'll get in.
When you book him, it's all about the booking.
Absolutely. I've said that for months, that the booking is exactly what matters. Now, getting into the Wyatts versus the Shield, without a doubt, one of the best 6-man tag matches that I've ever seen. My girlfriend was so upset that she couldn't make it to Buffalo Wild Wings with us to see that, because she's not even a diehard wrestling fan, but the few things that she watches a lot of the shows, or before the network came out, she used to watch a lot of the stuff on Hulu, and she saw the interaction between the Wyatts and the Shield, and she was like, babe, I want to see this. So she's itching for when Elimination Chamber 2014 gets added to the network, because she wants to see this. And I was texting her while the match was going on, and I was doing it while I was watching the screen because I didn't want to miss a thing. The match was so great, and it didn't even matter.
I mean, if you want to describe it, but I heard it was really, really good.
Oh my goodness, it was just you felt like you were back in 1998 because, and I don't mean that it was attitudinal or anything like that. The match was intense.
Right, people, like I said, they keep building it up. It's all how you build them up. You're building up these two forces who are unstoppable, and then you have the subplot of the Shield fighting, and it is intrigue,
Oh, absolutely, and it keeps the storyline going.
If you notice, the only thing that's been keeping the Shield together is the Wyatts, the hatred for the Wyatts. So every time they're about to implode, they come together one more time to go up against the Wyatts.
Well, I'll tell you something though, Frank. That 6-man tag it's a match of the year candidate as far as WWE standards go, and even by my standards. And I have very high standards when it comes to match quality. And that was one of the best 6-man tag matches I've seen in a while. And I urge you to watch the match in its entirety when it comes out on the network. But one match I think you can skip, and this is another point I'm bringing up for Elimination Chamber. It was Del Rio versus Batista. I mean,
yeah, we know that.
Batista was. I've never seen a former star get booed as badly as he did.
I heard the fans were actually cheering for Del Rio over Batista.
Yes, they were, and I think that's the most over Del Rio's been in a long time. And I'll tell you,
maybe the fans are just rubbing a little salt in his little, playing around with him.
Well,
not trying to get a reaction out of Batista.
Well, I'll tell you what, the fans are making Batista feel their wrath and their displeasure in the position he's in, and there's no question he's a full-fledged heel now.
That's another a little angle that's developing now is Batista versus the fans.
Well,
I think I read something the other night. What was it, last night on SmackDown? He got into an altercation with a fan, but it was a work, of course.
I didn't hear about that. I've been a little busy, so I haven't known about that. I
Yeah, and
didn't.
he's been tweeting stuff about the fans and stuff like that. It's a little interesting angle they're doing. He's ever since the second time he got booed, he put out tweets bashing the
No,
fans.
that I guess that's expected, but like I said, Batista's not being accepted by the fans as the number one good guy. He wasn't accepted from the first pay per view that he was showcased in this year. I think WWE made a very very big mistake putting him in that position,
Yeah, I
and
wouldn't say he's not accepted. I'm saying
he's not accepted by the audience as the hero, is what I'm saying.
right. It's really fun to boom. Hey, listen, it's right now you if the going is if the fans hate you, become the greatest heel, and I think you'll see that after WrestleMania. I think we'll get a feud with Daniel Bryan and Batista, and then you'll
Which I really wouldn't mind because their match last week on Raw was actually pretty damn decent. I give Batista credit; he held his own in that match. But
he's not to get to shape, but I really think that'll be the feud, the post WrestleMania feud.
yeah, because I don't see Randy Orton being in the title picture that much longer. He's been in there since SummerSlam, and he really hasn't helped with the ratings. You know, a lot of people were saying that the ratings weren't that good during the the late summer and the fall and the winter last year. And honestly, look who the common denominator was in every one of those title matches. It was Randy Orton, and it just goes to show Randy really doesn't draw that well.
Well, I think it's just a very weird time right now. You know, he's in the latter part of his career, and if you notice the way they book him is on free TV, he always loses, and then once they have you thinking that he's going to lose the title on the pay per view, he somehow comes
Holds it
on
out,
top.
yeah. Just
And
like
they also
and this
make
is a good that was a good segue into the next point of Elimination Chamber, and that's the lackluster finish to the actual title match. I mean, when it came down to Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton, you should have been in Buffalo Wild Wings because the people in the place were going nuts because they actually wanted Bryan to win that one. But the second I saw Kane, I'm like, yeah, they're going to find some way to screw this up. And what I loved about this whole thing, not that I loved that Bryan lost because I was pissed, but the fact that they actually showed the deflated looks on the faces of every single fan in that audience, that they were just so completely disappointed yet again. They had an opportunity to make it a triple threat match for the title. They didn't do it, and now it looks like Randy Orton versus Batista for the title. And, you know, I think that the fans have pretty much made it known who they want as the champion. It isn't just, and we'll get deeper into that issue later on, but I don't think that this is just the Smart Mark Internet wrestling community that was in that audience. I think that there are a lot of casual viewers that legitly want this guy to finally get it, and we'll get into that later. But what did you think about the finish to the title match?
Well, it was kind of predictable that the Warriors were going to interfere with Cena, start their feud.
Absolutely, very predictable.
Yeah, but anybody knows that they were gonna. That was really just a setup to. That was a bridge to WrestleMania pay per view, and nothing really was.
It's always been that way. The February pay per view has always done that.
Yeah, of course, and and just by them acknowledging and showing the fans, that shows you that this is all very well constructed angle to get the fans invested in it.
I'll tell you something, Frank. Your segues are perfect because the next point I have down on my list is CM Punk's walkout. There's been a lot of speculation on this issue, and we could spend a lot of time on this one. But the first question I have for you, and I'll offer my own opinion, is: do you think CM Punk's walkout is a work, or do you think it's a shoot?
I think he really did walk out. I mean, look, the fact that they have people thinking it's a work tells you they're doing a pretty good job of things. But I think he just wasn't happy, and he's the great gimmick is always an extension of the true person, and that's who he is. He just doesn't. He just doesn't. He always was number two, even when he was on top, and he had that long run as being champion. He was always never in the main event, and he wanted to really main event WrestleMania. And once he wasn't put in that slot, he just had it. And he's also he's probably he's been working hurt for the last year, and he's probably just burnt out, and you can't blame the guy,
No, not really. And then that pretty much is how I feel. I don't think that CM Punk's walkout is a work. I don't, because the way I look at it is this, Frank. They're giving fans refunds on going to see him at Access. They're offering fans refunds who pay tickets to see him. WWE's not going to take money out of their own pockets to go for an angle. They're not that unselfish. I mean, if they were paid attention to details like that, I'd have nothing to talk about. So now the next two parts I have on this is, if it is a work, let's just speculate. If this is a work, it is a work to what end?
Well, I think now that it'll become a work, shoot, work. If he does come back, they'll write it in as it was an angle, and he could do his pipe bomb gimmick again, like he did in 2011.
Oh, I would love that, because I think he's long overdue for a pipe bomb, like a legit shoot. I think he's long overdue for that.
And hell, maybe we could, if he does come back. I mean, his contract ends in July, but if it is a work, then maybe we could see a Daniel Bryan CM Punk feud at SummerSlam.
I wouldn't mind that at all. The match would probably be incredible. If this is a work, how do you see Punk playing into WrestleMania?
Well, I don't think he'll come back, but at this point, if he was going to come back, he would have came back already.
All right, that's a fair assessment. Now, this I guess you answered this partially. If it is not a work, why do you think he left? You mentioned injuries, frustration. I believe very firmly, and there was a few people on the page discussing the CM Punk walkout the other day on the page. I'm sure that you viewed it yourself. Now, how that Punk has no right to complain. He wrestled against top talents. He had a lot of TV time. He was champion for over 400 days. Let me explain something. CM Punk is one of the few wrestlers, and one of the reasons I respect him so much. He is one of those guys that you could honestly say doesn't do it for the money. Because if he was just doing it for the money, he would just be happy in the position he's in, like more than half that locker room is, accept what his position is, shut his mouth, and have a job for the rest of his life. But because the guy wants to have those great moments in those great pay-per-views, in those great matches, he opens his mouth and he lets them know that he's not happy being in the mid-card as the champion while John Cena is finishing a feud with John Laurinaitis in the main event. He's not happy being in a mid-card match in a great triple threat match against Kane and Daniel Bryan for the title when John Cena's having a cage match with the Big Show, that the match was horrid.
Right.
I mean, let's be very honest with ourselves. I understand that John Cena was the money guy at that time. However,
he's still the money guy.
now I'm talking about for this time frame while Punk was the champion. It was very clear that John Cena was still the money guy to them. But this goes back to my argument about The Rock being in the last match. There's no way anyone could tell me that pay-per-view, any of those pay-per-views, would have drawn one less penny with either of those guys in the semi-main event. It wouldn't have drawn any less, Frank. And that is my issue.
I think looking back, they should have never had a Cena Rock 2. They should have main evented Punk with Rock at WrestleMania.
Honestly, I was hoping that it would be John Cena versus CM Punk for the title and have Punk retain and get his moment and have Brock Lesnar fight The Rock at WrestleMania, and The Undertaker could have just stayed home.
Well, they'll never do that at WrestleMania. The Undertaker's streak has become a very big part of WrestleMania.
Oh, listen, I could talk about The Undertaker all night because I worship the ground he walks on. I felt that after 20-0, the guy should have just retired because,
Why should he? As long as he could wrestle once a year, and he could turn it on for one match a year and give it 100%. They have so much money to make, and he has so much money to make that the streak will never end.
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The streak should never end. That goes without saying, Frank. You'll never see.
Once it ends, there's no point.
There is no point. My father put it best. It's too far gone now. with the streak. But getting back to Punk, I understand why he'd be frustrated because he was never really, he was given the title, but I don't recall him closing out a lot of pay-per-views as the champion. And that to me, it not only devalues him, it devalues the title because what that told me as a fan was unless the belt is on John Cena, it don't mean shit. And I think that's very disrespectful, not just to the belt, but to the guy holding the belt. Because let's be very honest with ourselves. You want to talk about match quality, Punk blows Cena out of the water.
Right. Well, right. That's probably his frustration from his point of view. Every time he has a match, he steals the show at the pay-per-view. His match against Lesnar was a classic.
But that's another thing that he has every right to be frustrated. Every big name he's wrestled, he has lost. Triple H, Brock Lesnar, The Undertaker, The Rock. Every single one of those big-time matches, he has lost. Now, I'm not saying he should have ended the streak. No one should ever end the streak. But did Triple H benefit from beating him? No. Did Brock Lesnar benefit from beating him? No. Did The Rock need to win the title for an 8th time? Not really. All of those guys are Hall of Fame bound. They should have put him over. And they didn't do it. And I think it all comes down to ego. Because in their eyes, a guy like Punk shouldn't beat any of those 3 guys. And I think that's a load of garbage. Because I know a lot of guys that are big and muscular. But I know a lot of other guys that are skilled and could break them in half. Size doesn't matter in the world today.
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you.
It really doesn't matter. Because I'll be honest with you, I'd rather have a guy that knows how to fight than have some big, tall meathead that's probably juiced up on steroids. I mean, come on. To me, I was watching a pay-per-view on the network the other day of The Rock back in 2001. That's when The Rock looked like The Rock. Now he looks like he's been juicing so bad. I mean, come on. Like WrestleMania 28, he looks so massive. I'm like, that's not The Rock I grew up watching.
Yeah, he put on a lot of muscle for his role in the Hercules movie.
No. But anyways, that's going to cut it for now, and we'll be back in a few minutes. Frank and I will be returning after this short break, and we got a lot more to talk about, guys. Be right back.